All right, boys and girls, this is math message 3-6. And in this math message, we're going to be working on subtracting bigger numbers using the expand and trade strategy. So I want you to think about what expand and trade might mean. We'll look at that closely here in just a couple of minutes. All right, before we get started on that strategy, let's warm up. I want you to solve this problem using base 10 blocks. So you're going to need to have paper, pencil, or whiteboard and marker. If you need to gather things, pause the video and do that. And go ahead and solve 71 minus 46 using base 10 blocks. And then we'll come back together and talk about it. Pause the video. Okay, if I'm going to solve 71 minus 46, I'm going to draw 71 with my base 10 blocks, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 1. Now, when I go to do my minus 46, I don't need to draw 46. I'm not adding 46 more. I mean, think about what I'm doing. I'm taking away 46. So I just need to start subtracting from my 71. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract my 40, 10, 20, 30, 40. And now I'm going to subtract my 6. Now what happens when I go to subtract my 6 ones? I don't have enough, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to have to trade a 10 for 10 ones. Okay, I traded. Now I'm able to subtract 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's look to see what I have left. I have 2 10s, so I have 20. And I have 5 1s, so 25. All right, let's go ahead and do another base 10 block problem. I want you to go ahead and do 241 minus 125, drawing out your base 10 blocks. Go ahead, pause the video. All right, so I'll draw out 240 and 1. And I'm going to subtract 125. So I'll go ahead and subtract my 100. I'll go ahead and subtract my 20. And now I have to subtract my 5. Now I don't have enough ones to subtract my 5, so what am I going to do? I have to trade, right? So I'm going to trade a 10 for 10 ones. All right, and now I'm able to subtract. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what am I left with? I'm left with 100. I'm left with 110. And I'm left with 6 ones. So 116 is my correct answer. All right, so now let's look at this expand and trade strategy. I am going to put a little screen up for just a minute because I want us to look at the title of expand and trade. So the first thing that you're going to do is write the number in expanded form. Now we've been talking about expanded form. Expanded form is when you're taking that number and you're expanding it. You're taking each digit and writing out its value. It's kind of like drawing it out in base 10 blocks, but we're just going to write it with numbers. And then trade. Okay, we just traded base 10 blocks, didn't we? When we didn't have enough ones, we went over and traded a 10 for some ones. If I don't have enough 10s, what do? I go get them from the hundreds and I trade them. So this strategy is called expand and trade because first you're going to expand the numbers and then you're going to make sure you do all of your trading before you subtract. So let's look at what I mean. The first thing that we're going to do, boys and girls, let's get this out of my way here, is we're going to take this number that's written horizontally and we're going to go ahead and we're going to set it up vertically like this, okay, where you have your 10s and your 1s all lined up on top of each other. Now it's going to be really important that you start with that bigger number on top and subtract your smaller number and that you keep those place values lined up. 10s need to be lined up with 10s, 1s need to be lined up with 1s. Okay, So the first thing I want you to do is write this number vertically, and then I want you to take this number and I want you to write it in expanded form. So I took my 53 and I expanded it out to 50 and 3. Then I took my 27 and I expanded it out to 20 and 7. All right, so that's the first part of the expand and trade strategy. I write it in expanded form. Now I have to do my trading. Boys and girls, this is going to be super, super important as you're doing subtraction. You have to make sure that the top number in each place value is bigger. You have to have more on top. So I go through and I check each place value. So I'm going to check my tens. Is there more on top? Yes, 50 is more than 20. Then I'm going to go to my ones. Is there more on top? No. If I have 3 ones, I can't take away 7 ones. So what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to trade. All right, how do I get more ones? Well, I go over to my tens place, right? I have 50. I'm going to take away 10, so now I only have 40. I'm going to bring that 10 over to the ones place, so now I have 13. All right, so now I'm going to check again before I start subtracting. Do I have more on top? Yes. 40 is more than 20. Do I have more on top here? Yes. 13 is more than 7. Now I can start subtracting. If you do all of your trading first, it really doesn't matter which place value you start to subtract. You can start subtracting in your tens place, or you can start subtracting in your ones place, as long as you did all of your trading first. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my ones place. 13 minus 7 is 6. 40 minus 20 is 20. And when I put those two numbers together, I have 26. All right, let's look at another problem, and I want you to try this one. Make sure you have your whiteboard or paper, and I want you to go ahead and rewrite 66 minus 48. I want you to rewrite it vertically. And if you need to pause the video to give yourself more time, go ahead and do that. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and write the numbers in expanded form. So 66 is really 60 plus 6. 48 is really 40 plus 8. Okay, so you wrote it in expanded form. What's the next part to this strategy? It's called expand and trade. So we're going to get all of our trading done before we start subtracting. We need to make sure that that top number is bigger in each place value. So 60 is more than 40. We're good to go. Is 6 more than 8? No, it's not. We need to trade, okay? We cannot take 8 ones from 6 ones. So where do we trade and get more ones? We go to the tens place. You always trade by going to the place value to the left. So I'm going to go to the tens place. Now I have 50, and I'm going to bring that 10 over. How much do you have now if you brought over 10? Now you have 16, right? Okay, so I'm going to double check before I start subtracting. I always double check myself. I've got more on top in the tens place. I got more on top in the ones place. I am ready to subtract. So let's do it. 16 minus 8, what is that? And now, subtract my tens. 50 minus 40, what is that? And when I put them all together, 10 plus 8, my answer is 18. All right, let's try another problem. Let's try a bigger one now in the hundreds. Go ahead and rewrite this number vertically. Pause the video to give yourself some time. Okay, and let's go ahead and write it in expanded form. Pause the video. So 241 minus 125. All right. So I wrote those numbers in expanded form. The strategy is called expand and trade. Let's get all of our trading done. Let's check each place value. 200's bigger than 100. We're good to go. 40 is bigger than 20. We're good to go. 1 is not bigger than 5, so I need to do some trading. I don't have enough 1s. Where do I go to get 1s? To the tens place. All right, I have 40. I'm going to take away 10. Now I have 30. Bring over the 10. What do you have here now? Well, 10 plus 1 is 11, right? All right, boys and girls, go ahead and pause the video. Solve this problem. All right, 11 minus 5 is 6. 30 minus 20 is 10. And 200 minus 100 is 100. When I put that all together, my answer is 116. All right, let's do another one together. This one here can be a little bit tricky, so I want to still do this one together before I kind of have you go off and try a few on your own. So let's write the number vertically. And be very careful on this one when you're writing it vertically. Do you notice how there's nothing in the hundreds place here? So I got to leave that blank. You can put a 0 there if you want to, or you can just leave it blank. But you have to make sure, boys and girls, so many times I see this all the time. And you can't do that. If you put the 3 right here, you're saying that's 300. Those place values have to be lined up. So 37, just like that. All right, go ahead and write this number in expanded form. Now again, this is going to be important that you make sure that you write the expanded form where you account for every single place value. So I have 100. Now I have 0 tens. I need to still write 0. And I have 4 1s. Okay. And now I'm going to come down. I've got 37. I got to make sure I write my 30 in the correct place value. 37. I didn't have any hundreds. All right, so now I am ready. I expanded my numbers. Now I need to do all of my trading. All right, I've got more on top here. I'm good to go. Oh, I do not have more on top here. Where do I get more tens? If I don't have enough tens, where do I get more? I always go to the place value to the left, right? I'm going to get it from the hundreds. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to borrow from the hundreds. Now, I'm going to take away 100. So now I'm down to 0 hundreds. I'm bringing that 100 over and making tens out of it, right? I'm bringing it over to the tens place. So 100. And now, let's see here. I'm going to check my place value again. I'm looking at my hundreds place. Zeros on the top and the bottom, so I'm good to go there. I have 100 is bigger than 30. I'm good to go there. In my ones place, 4 is not bigger than 7. So I'm going to need to go next door and trade. So I'm going to go over to the tens place. Now I have 100 over there because I brought it from the hundreds. Now I'm going to borrow 10. So I'm down to 90. I'm going to bring that 10 over and put it in my ones place. So now I have 14. All right, now checking to see. I've got more on top, and, well, 0 and 0. So I'm good to go. Now I can do my subtracting. 14 minus 7 is 7. 90 minus 30. Remember, 9 minus 3 is 6, but it's 90 minus 30, so it's 60. When I put those together, and then I have no hundreds. 0 minus 0 is 0. Okay, so when I put those together, my answer is 67. All right, let's go ahead and I'm going to have you do 437 minus 248. Go ahead and write the number vertically like this. Go ahead and write it in expanded form and then do all of your trading and then do your subtracting. Remember, it's called expand and trade. Pause the video and do this problem. All right, so when I expand this problem, I have 437 minus 248. Sometimes I do leave out those little plus signs in between because sometimes it just gets to be a little bit too much. You can put them in or leave them out. Just make sure your numbers are spread apart. All right, I expanded it. Now I'm going to do my trading. I'm going to see, is there more on top? Good to go. More on top? Nope, I need to trade. I'm going to come over to my hundreds. I have 400. When I take 100 away, now I have 300. I'm going to bring that 100 over, and now I have 130. All right, so now I've got more on top. I've got more on top. Do I have more on top? Nope, I'm going to need to borrow. So I come over to the tens. I have 130. I'm going to borrow. That gives me 120. I'm going to bring that 10 over. Now I have 17. So check your work, boys and girls. If these are the numbers you should have had at the top of each place value before you started to subtract. All right, now I can subtract. As long as I've done all of my trading, I can start subtracting anywhere. This time I'm going to go ahead and subtract in the hundreds. 300 minus 200 is 100. 120 minus 40, yeah, sorry, 120 minus 40 is 80, because I know that 12 minus 4 is 8, but this is 8 tenths. And 17 minus 8 is 9. When I put those all together, I should have 189. All right, let's go ahead and get out your workbook and turn to page 75. So pause the video so you can get yourself together. All right, so they showed you an example there, which is exactly what we've been doing. And now let's go ahead, let's do number 1 together. And then I'm going to let you go off and do number 2 and 3 on your own. So first they want you to do an estimate. So I am going to estimate 65 is close to 70 and 47 is close to 50. And when I subtract those, I get 20. So my answer when I'm finished should be close to 20. Let's go ahead and rewrite the problem vertically. Pause the video if you need some more time. Expand your numbers. And now let's trade. Is there more on top? Good to go. More on top. Nope, I need to trade. Come next door. I had 60. I'm going to take away 10, so now I have 50. Bring that 10 over, and now I have 15. Now I have more on top in each place value. I'm good to subtract. 50 minus 40 is 10. 15 minus 7 is 8. When I put those two together, my answer is 18. Is it close to my estimate? Yep, 18 is pretty close to 20, so I'm pretty safe in saying I probably did that one correct. All right, boys and girls, I want you to pause the video. I want you to go ahead and do number 2 and number 3 completely on your own. Make sure you do your estimate, rewrite your number vertically, and then make sure you expand your numbers and do all of your trading before you subtract. Go ahead and do number 2 and 3 together, then you can start the video and check your work. All right, let's check over your work and make sure that you did everything correctly. Let's start with the estimate. First of all, 182 is close to 180. 56 is close to 60. Now you may have used different numbers for your estimate. Maybe you rounded 182 to 200 minus 60. Okay, either way would be just fine. You're just getting an estimate. You're finding a number that's close. So 18 minus 6, or I should say, I'm going to look at 80 minus 60 is 20. And put my 100 back on it. So my estimate should be close to 120. If you did an estimate like this, it would be close to 140. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and write that number vertically. 182 minus 56. And then you're going to write it in expanded form. 100 82 minus 56. Now be sure that you had those numbers lined up by place value. Make sure the hundreds, the tens, and the ones are all lined up. So you wrote your number in expanded form. Now it's time to trade. Check each place value. Make sure there's more on top. More on top. More on top. Oh, not more on top. So I am going to go over to the tens place and borrow. I'm going to trade a 10. So now there's 70 tens. Bring that 10 over, and so now I should have 12 ones. Now I've got more on top, more on top, more on top. I'm ready to subtract. 12 minus 6 is 6. 70 minus 50 is 20. And 100 minus nothing is 100. So when I put those digits back together, I have 126, which when I look at my estimate is really close to my estimate. Even if you had estimated with 140, you're still pretty close to your answer. So my answer is 126. All right, let's look at number 5. Let's see if I can get all of this stuff. Whoops, maybe just move it over this way, so I can see it. All right, so now let's look at 341 minus 225. Let's do my estimate. 341 is really close to 340. 225 is really close to 230. And when I subtract those, I should get about 110. Now maybe you decided to do it a little bit differently. Maybe you said 341 was close to 300, 225 was close to 200, and so your answer would be close to 100. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and write those numbers vertically. 341 minus 225, and we're going to write those out into expanded form. 341 minus 225. And now it's time to do our trading. Check to see. More on top. Yep, good to go. More on top. Yes, good to go. More on top. Nope, there's not more on top, so I need to go trade. I'm going to go over to my tens place, grab a 10. So now I'm left with 30. Bring that 10 over. Now I have 11 ones. Now I've got more on top, more on top, more on top. I'm ready to subtract. 11 minus 5 is 6. 30 minus 20 is 10. And 300 minus 200 is 100. When I put those back together, I have 116, which is pretty close to my estimates. All right, this lesson actually has an extra practice page that goes along with it. So not only the expand and trade, but we're also going to do a little bit of a review lesson with bar graphs, which is going to come in handy because the next couple of lessons we're going to be working on some pictographs. So it's good to kind of review these bar graphs. All right, so they gave us a bar graph here. I always like to look at the title of my bar graph so I know what's going on. It's about grade 3 favorite music types. And when I look down here, I see there's hip hop, classical, rock, and jazz. That's my types of music. And I see my scale over here. It's really important to pay attention to your scale. I know that the numbers stand for the number of children, and it's counting by tens, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So my scale is counting by tens. That means each one of these spaces is worth 10. All right, so now looking at my question, it says, how many more children like rock than jazz? Now, guys, we have been talking about this. When you hear it say, how many more, I know I'm going to need to do what? I'm going to need to subtract. All right, so how many more, how many less, how many fewer, how many greater? Those are all comparison questions. We're comparing things. If I'm comparing things, I'm finding the difference. And in math, when I'm finding the difference, I am subtracting. All right, so How many more children like rock than jazz? So I'm going to look at my rock and I'm going to look at my jazz. Now guys, I like to go ahead and put my number at the top of my bar. So when I follow this bar over here, it falls right between 50 and 60, so I know that that's 55. And then jazz, when I follow that bar over, that's 20. All right, so if I want to know how many more children like rock than jazz, if 55 kids liked rock and 20 kids like jazz, I'm subtracting those two numbers. 55 minus 20, pause the video, get that figured out, and your answer should be 35. And if you want to count your spaces, you could do that too to find the difference. I've got 10, 20, 30, and then half of a bar would be 5. So I could check myself by looking at it that way as well. All right, the next question says, how many fewer children like classical than hip hop? Again, I'm comparing numbers. You hear that? How many fewer? I'm comparing two things. If I want to know how many fewer children like classical, so let's look at classical, which is, this is between 10 and 20, so I've got 15. And hip hop here is up at 40. I want to know how many fewer. I'm comparing. So I can do a subtraction problem. 40 minus 15. Okay, and when I do 40 minus 15, go ahead and pause the video, see if you can get that figured out. And you should come up with 25. If I want to check myself on the bar graph, I know that there's 10. Whoops. Let's see here. I put my eraser in the wrong spot. There's 10, 20, and half of a bar would be 5. All right, here's another question. How many more children like hip hop than classical and jazz together? Ooh, this really takes it up a notch. Classical and jazz together. What kind of math do we do when we're finding something that's together? Finding things that are together, classical and jazz together, I am adding. And so first, I'm going to put that classical and jazz together. I'm going to add those two up like it says to do. So I've got my classical, I've got my jazz right here between 10 and 20. What would be right here between 10 and 20? I would have 15, right? And then my jazz is right here at 20. And so when I put those two together, I've got to add these. So I'm adding 20 plus 15, which gives me 35. And it says, how many more children like hip hop than those together? Well, hip hop is 40. So that's still more than classical and jazz, right? So I'm going to do my 40 minus my 35, which gives me 5. All right, and then in number 4, it wants you to write a number story that could be solved using the graph, and then write the answer to your story. Boys and girls, when you're looking at bar graphs, you can always look to see which is the most favorite, which is the least favorite. You can find those how many more, how many fewer questions. You can ask those questions how many together. So go ahead and come up with a good question on your own. All right, guys, that is it for Math Message 3-6.